As you can see, winter has come here at the Dirt Trax World headquarters, and it's going to come even more. We're expecting more snow, and it's just going to turn into a winter wonderland, which I love. But before we get too much snow, I need to head out and check on a buddy's hunt camp, and that hunt camp is on one of the toughest trails in the entire county. So I tried to figure out what vehicle would be best to go on this trip with, and I mean, we have a brand new Ranger SP here, so I'm going to take that, and there's a reason why.
So the reason I wanted to bring this Ranger 570 SP, this is a mid-size Ranger, and these Rangers are basically universally useful for everything. They're completely capable of almost anything you want to do with them, whether it be going for a trail ride, which is sort of what we're doing right now, or if it's hauling stuff, which we're also doing right now, rock crawling, which this trail has a ton of. Basically anything you want to do, you can do with a mid-size Ranger 570. Now, another aspect of it that's important is that this is a very tight trail. So this is only 56 inches wide is the 570 Ranger total width. It's very maneuverable and it fits on any trail. So this is really the perfect vehicle for doing stuff like this. The 570, I think people scoff at a little bit because they think it's underpowered as a 570 single, but the reality is this thing makes 44 horsepower, and so far on this ride, this is the most technical trail in my whole area, I haven't had to use low range once. Everywhere I want to go, like right now, it's just crawling along so perfect. It has excellent low end torque, and I think that the improvement in that is largely due to the new larger diameter clutches in 2022 on this new 570. You can be as smooth as you want to be. You can make the smallest throttle inputs and it just is butter. I absolutely love how this thing's clutched and how the motor works. No complaints whatsoever. 44, it definitely feels like it has more than 44 horsepower for sure. Obviously the cool styling of this thing is important because people want a vehicle that looks cool. But the reality is, it's not important to how it works, but there's no question when you walk into a showroom or when you're out on the trail with your buddies, you want to have a vehicle that looks tough, and this one looks super tough. It's an almost exact copy of the new full-size Rangers, and they did a great job making it similar but smaller without looking like it's downsized. Another major improvement that they made to the 570 for 2022 that the Polaris engineers made was this vehicle now has a 660 watt stator, which means it is far more capable of running way more accessories. Say you put a cab on it, you want to put a heater, it can do that. If you want to run a bunch of light bars like everybody seems to want to do, snow, you can do that too. All the different features that you might want, all the different accessories, this thing can run them no problem. In terms of utility, the big upgrade, I think, besides the stator on this unit, is the cargo box. When you're headed out to a hunt camp like we are, you're hauling stuff like, a generator, a can of gas, a cooler with some food, your gear for the couple nights you're there. You're not usually hauling more than 500 pounds, but you take up a lot of space because those items are larger. So having a larger cargo box means that even though you're not going to maybe overload it or you can't load it with more weight, you can definitely load it with more stuff. And that's, for a lot of people, that's even more important. One thing I'm impressed with, especially on this trail that's really gnarly in a lot of spots, is just how good this thing rides. This 570 Ranger, it rides as good as any other full-size vehicle that I've driven. It has 9 inches of travel up front and 10 in the back. It's preload adjustable only, but it really rides good. Fully independent, obviously, but you can feel the suspension articulating. You can feel it moving over the rocks and the rough ground. It keeps the wheels in contact with the ground, which is really nice. You're always getting good traction, and it just provides a really smooth ride. This time of year is always very interesting because the puddles are all frozen. There's about an inch of ice on all of these puddles and water crossings. So it makes traversing them even more interesting. So one more thing that I notice about this vehicle that I have to gripe about, and I don't have a lot of gripes, and they're fairly minor, is the steering wheel. Now, there's nothing wrong with the shape of the steering wheel. It tilts, which is really nice, and I like that feature, but it's kind of a hard plastic. It's not rubberized, and when you're wearing certain types of gloves or when you get your gloves wet or muddy, it can get a little bit slippery. I just think, you know, for whatever extra cost the rubberized steering wheel, you know, incurs, it's worth it, especially on a higher end model like this. Should have the rubber steering wheel for better grip. It's not a huge issue. The steering wheel works fine, but it could be better, and I think on the ST it should be. Now there's a long list of other changes, some small, some big, that the 2022 570 Ranger midsize has received this year. There's changes to the chassis, it's stronger. There's obviously a ton of changes to the interior. It's completely redesigned, so obviously there's a ton of changes, but the interior is really nice. You've got 3 12-volt outlets and a charge port, as all Polaris vehicles come with now. One thing people don't know about that 12-volt charging port for charging a vehicle is that you can actually get an adapter and you can power other stuff off of that plug. So you actually have 4 12-volt outlets on this vehicle. Now the one thing I'll say about the outlets, it's great to have so many, but they are all regular 12-volt cigarette lighter style plugs. There isn't not one of them has USB plugs, and I think that would have made a lot more sense. I mean, sure, you can get an adapter, but just having the USB plugs in the dash would make way more sense. I've spent quite a bit of time in this Ranger up to this point, not just today, but in previous days as well. I've been using it quite a bit. And Polaris does a great job with accessories. They have such a long list of accessories, and there's a few that I can see right off the bat. I mean, they're the standard ones that everybody should have, and I honestly don't think you should leave your dealership without it. The first one is a roof. I'm covered in snow, and if it wasn't open, if I had a roof, I wouldn't be covered in snow. So to me, a roof is like, just get one. The other one is a windshield. A half windshield would be ideal, especially on a cold day like today. This vehicle doesn't come with a winch. You're going to want to add a winch. Now, those are things that you're going to have right off the top, in my opinion. Other than that, though, there really isn't a lot of other things I think you have to do. I mean, all kinds of things you could do if you want, but once you got a windshield, a roof, and a winch, you're pretty much set for almost any situation you might find yourself in. Man, I love this trail. So many technical spots in here, and I love that the Ranger just has no trouble with them. And you expect the Ranger to be more just for utility purposes and not as great in the woods, I guess you could say, but that isn't the case at all. If I can get out here with this vehicle,